Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Trend Report. I'm glad you're here for our first installment in 2023 of our CEO Chat series. I know this is a favorite of our listeners, and I'm glad that you're here joining us today. And I'm excited to welcome a new friend, if you will, to the show, someone I just had the opportunity to meet through LinkedIn. And we're going to have a little conversation today about him and about his business. And so, Jim, I'm going to totally butcher your last name, and I think it's
That's okay.
say it for me.
Sure. It's Jim Contois.
So Jim Contois with
Yep.
Parcel, and Jim is the CEO of Parcel. They're an outdoor furniture manufacturer, and we're going to dive in. So Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So tell us about you. Tell us how you got started in the industry, if you will.
Sure, you bet. So I've been around for almost 30 years. Not quite.
That's
30,
okay. I have to say that out loud too. So.
My background is an industrial designer. So I started in product design and I worked for a few corporate jobs as a corporate designer, starting in kind of architectural building products. I worked at a company called Armstrong in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know them from ceilings and floors. But then, after I kind of cut my teeth with that type of corporate job, I moved over to KI up in Green Bay and really started getting involved in furniture. And did probably I think about a 5 or 6 year stint at KI as one of their staff designers, and then had an opportunity to move to Iowa to go work at All Steel, which this was in kind of the early aughts, like 2002, I think it was 2003. Mm-hmm. And at that time, H&I or Han had just purchased All Steel, or they had done it maybe a couple of years before that, mm-hmm. and they were starting to put a ton of money into that brand and effort and resources to try and kind of build it up to one of the kind of a premium brand, which they actually successfully did.
Oh, absolutely, they have, yeah.
They hit that spot. And so around that time, they kind of lured me and offered a job as kind of their first, really one of their first in-house designers that kind of worked for the organization. And it looked like a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity. And I had spent probably about 5 or 6 years there, kind of climbing that ladder, and ended up essentially directing industrial design by the time that I left. And through the course of that time, I started as a designer and ended up becoming really kind of a steward, and worked with a lot of outside designers and started to see how kind of that aspect of the design business mm-hmm. worked. And all of us probably know that the furniture industry it's a really common way to work with freelance designers to design products.
100%. I've interviewed a few of those.
I started doing that and started working with some of these people that were outside designers, and worked with them on projects at All Steel for that brand. And eventually, probably around 2003, I think it was, no, 2008. It was 2008. I really started to kind of get the bug that this was the right time in my life. If I was going to try and jump off of a cliff and try and do something different, it was time to do it. My kids were really little. They could eat mm-hmm. peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and nobody would know the difference. And so I quit. And it was actually right at around 2008, which we remember that was a terrible time, economically for the company.
Yeah, it sure was. It sure was.
But, it ended up being what it was. So, mm-hmm. and so I
want to ask you a question real quick, though.
Yeah, sure.
So before you kind of dive in there, what was it? So you had a great history or career, if you will, in our industry at KI, at All Steel, learned a lot, used your design background, helped design products, worked with outsourced designers that I've interviewed several of them. What was it that gave you that entrepreneurial bug that was like, okay, now is the time for me to go jump off this cliff? Because I did the same thing.
Good question. I think that, I think that I really just came to a point where in some ways, I think I'm seeing this, through my career as time goes on, is that I get to this point of where I feel like I don't even want to say master something. I don't think mm-hmm. I'll ever be master of anything, but get to the point where it's like, okay, this is becoming maybe old hat. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And mm-hmm. I need something to do. I need something to keep interested. I like to make things and like to create things. It's just kind of like, just the
sure.
DNA that I have. And anyway, and I kind of looked at it as this was a good time to do it. I should try it. There's no reason why I shouldn't. I have one life, and I should take these risks. They're really not that big of a deal. They really aren't.
Mhm.
If you look in, 10 generations ago, I probably would have been past my life expectancy. So, why not try
Sure.
this? So,
Well, I think that's a really great message for the people listening is you're at a time in your life that you said, I need to do something different. Things were
mhm.
becoming routine and very
Yeah,
habitual and not,
routine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and not really exciting you. And you wanted to do something and you realized, hey, I want to do something for myself. Why not go do this? And I can try it. And if it works, great. That's awesome. But if it doesn't work, that's okay
Yeah,
too.
go get a job.
Yeah, you put yourself
Yeah,
out there, right?
yeah, go get
And
a
you
job. So,
you
and
leaned into your dreams, if you will, which I think it's a great message for the
yeah,
people listening. Lean into your dreams,
and
100%.
I mean, at that time, I mean, I had developed a fair amount of confidence. All Steel
Mhm.
had done well. I could ride the shirt tails,
Sure.
saying that, I witnessed this. Excuse me, I was able to go to smaller, I shouldn't say smaller, but mid-sized companies in this industry saying that, hey, I just bared witness to, a company that kind of came on the market and got some attention and did some really good work.
Mhm.
And I gained that knowledge. I had a point in my career where I actually truly believed in the knowledge that I had was of value.
Mhm.
And so that kind of gave me the confidence to go knock on doors and knock on doors for 10 years. Actually, I did it.
Sure. So, your first entree into the world of entrepreneurship, that was actually designing products for other people?
Correct. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Yes,
got it.
yes. So for about 10 years, and this was,
Sure.
right after I left All Steel, I worked for a bunch of manufacturers. I did work for H&I. I did work for the Han
Okay,
brand.
sure.
I did work for Trendway, was a good client of mine for some
Mhm.
time. Bill Bundy, he was there a long time ago.
Yep.
And I did a lot of work for Indiana Furniture. They ended up probably being probably my most valuable client
Oh, that's
through that
great.
period of time in my life. And I know you interviewed Max. I
I
listened to
did. Yeah,
both of
Max
you.
was on the
So,
CEO chat. Sure was.
but anyway, so for a period of the time, a good portion of that time, I actually worked with another designer, and the two of us partnered quite a bit. His name's Ramsey Matson, and he's done quite a bit of work in this industry. He actually does a pretty significant custom
Mhm.
business. He manages a custom studio for Pivot Interiors in
Okay.
California.
Yep. We know
So,
Pivot.
but anyway, we did a lot of projects together. We worked with Indiana together. A couple of the other clients I had was Surface Works up in
Mhm.
Wisconsin, and what else can I name drop?
Those are some
Arcadia.
really great brands
Yeah.
already so
Yeah,
far. So,
Arcadia, actually,
oh,
Arcadia,
nice.
Casey is a wonderful man. He
Mhm.
is a mentor. I really like him a lot. I have some great designs that have been in Arcadia's line for 10 years, and they're still good. So they're still strong. So, but anyway, so I did that for about 10 years,
Mhm.
and kind of knocked on those doors. And sometime around, I would say probably around 2017,
Mhm.
2018, I really started to realize that um, the outdoor category was an emerging category, that I think there was a lot of potential.
Mhm.
And I think it was I shouldn't say poorly served, but it wasn't a great served market with regards to product availability
Mhm.
and selection and
Sure.
targeted market to a lot of kind of the contract corners of the business. And I at the time, we none of the clients that we were working with were interested in pursuing outdoor furniture. They were all kind of inside guys.
Mhm.
And actually, we did a design for Arcadia, which in my mind, and I don't know if maybe I'll regret saying this, maybe Casey will or whatever, but we I really felt it should be an outdoor line, actually, but they
Mhm.
actually created it and envisioned it in an indoor line, and it's still selling. But really, from that, it's like that idea kind of kept gnawing away. And I'm like, you know what, this should exist. There's opportunity.
Sure.
And so that, again, that was around 2008, and the idea kind of wouldn't go away. And this also somewhat coincided with me coming to a point in my career where I was not stagnant, but it's like, okay, this is becoming routine, this kind of transaction. Oh, I'm going to go
Mhm.
pitch designs. I've got a portfolio of good clients that I work with. I can kind of go back to the well,
Mhm.
still have to go get some new stuff. And, I have to do that. But I kind of kind of figured it out, and or at least figured it out to a certain extent, and I could see what it was going to be.
Mhm.
And so, but nonetheless, I still had this idea in the back of my head that there's room for this. And I kept working on it and kept working on it. And I would say around, you know, by 2019, the beginning of 2019, I really actually made the decision that I was going to pursue it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to design the product, I'm going to build the product, I'm going to source, I'm going to, work with vendors, I'm going to
Mhm.
market the product, I'm going to figure out how to distribute the market product, I'm going to brand it, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to,
Sure.
and the reason why I felt foolish slash confident enough to do that is, through the course of consulting for 10 years, I had a great opportunity to work with a lot of these people in, these mid-size, often family-held businesses,
Sure.
especially in this industry, um, mid-sized businesses, to help them design product. And I was working with, at mid-sized businesses, I'm working with, presidents and owners of the company. And I got a chance to see the underbelly of how this all works.
Sure.
And, at the corporate, I kind of got to see how the consulting worked, through that lens.
Mhm.
And then through consulting, got to actually see how the whole machine worked,
Yeah.
and I saw how they often worked with independent sales reps. I saw how they often worked with vendors, regional vendors or international vendors, global
Mhm.
vendors, that usually supply components or parts. I saw how they actually added real value from a manufacturing perspective to whatever
Mhm.
product they were producing. And I certainly was firsthand with designing and figuring out
Sure.
how to design product for manufacturing, which is a whole different thing than designing, a table. To design a product line that builds 100 tables in 50 different sizes is a totally different,
Sure.
um, kind of paradigm to design for. And so I kind of figured that out, or at least I thought I at least had enough exposure to not be totally intimidated or feel like I had horrible blind spots.
Mm.
And so I decided to, put the effort into figuring it out.
So, Jim, I really appreciate everything you've shared with us so far. And I love the story of how you became an entrepreneur and how you leaned into some of the things that you've learned. But I'm curious, you talked a little bit about outdoor furniture and why, but where
Mhm.
did the name come from? Where did the name
The
Parcel
name of the
come from?
company.
Yeah.
I guess the only story behind the name is that, you sit down and you write a whole list of things that kind of make sense. And, I thought of parcel being in the context of a plot of land or a little corner of land
Sure.
outdoors. So it seemed like it kind of worked, structurally with that kind of concept. There seemed to be some familiarity with it. And then secondly, it's a natural word, it's a short word. And guess what? Parcelfurniture.com was available. So,
Well,
so it just worked. And it's some of these things, they sound great, but they end up being really just, either
Mhm.
fortuitous or just practical reasons.
Well, you're
So
highlighting some of the challenges that you go through when starting a business or
yeah,
when actually developing a product for that matter, is all the little things like, is the URL address available? How
oh
do I
yeah,
spell it? Can people remember it? Is it simple or not, 20 syllables long or 10 words
yes,
long, right? Those
correct.
are all the real struggles of starting something right out of the gate. So you started the whole idea in 2018, started designing some products and stuff. What was the first product that you designed?
Actually, it was really a picnic table. We looked at the market and it seemed like most anything that was available, it was almost like this classic kind of American piece of furniture
Sure.
that really the only thing that existed in a commercial aspect was either, stuff that was really utilitarian or looked like playground furniture,
Mhm.
and or there were some entries in some European products. There's some great brands like Extremis or Catal out of
Mhm.
Spain that they produce beautiful product. Extremis has a beautiful picnic table, but they're not really truly. They're a really really high price point,
Sure.
from a practical standpoint.
Mhm.
and they're not really available in this market. I mean, because of that, there's a lot of barriers to that. At least there was at that time, and so it felt like we should start with something like that. And then, just because of my background with product development and doing systems design and things like that, I know that you need basically a collection of products.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically just, with this first product line, hit this real kind of core, basically foundation type product. I think is maybe the best name for it, which is tables, pedestal tables, picnic tables. We certainly have some seating and benches. We added a couple little milk stools. We've got an Adirondack chair. It's grown over the last couple of years a little bit, but it's really kind of this core line that, from a practical standpoint, in starting a business, you need to have something that's like, your go-to thing.
Sure. Well, it's classic American, right?
Exactly.
Classic American picnic table. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you added to it and started expanding it and kind of growing from there, which I love, because we all have to start somewhere, right? We got to start with something.
Yes.
And so you saw the need in the market for more outdoor furniture in the contract space.
Yes.
And you started designing products. You introduced your first product. How many products are you up to now?
I think our SKU list is still not that high, maybe 30 or 40, something.
It's
like
a great
that.
number, though.
Somewhere around there. So
Excellent.
Something about that. And, I think one of the things that I have actually found, to my surprise, in launching this and starting to get into the market, is that, originally my target was kind of corporate amenity spaces. And that was probably just because that's where I came from.
Sure.
And that's where I really thought there was an absence of good, suitable product. And after we've started selling, and this in part probably has to do with some of the great sales channels that we've connected with, but we've gotten into hospitality, bar, restaurant, we've done breweries, things like that. We've gotten into higher ed. I've gotten into colleges that I will never get to.
Sure.
And we've done airports. We've done a small airport. We did like fire stations. So we've got all these kind of some K through 12 stuff. But what I have really been surprised is how many different vertical markets I've actually found interest in, or people have found interested in the brand.
Well, I think, when 2020 happened, because you started right before 2020, right? And 2020 happened. And so we had that whole event for 2 years.
Yeah.
It certainly highlighted outdoor and people wanting to go outdoor. And though I think there was a trend emerging prior to that about extending the office to the outside, after that really focused on how can we extend the office outside. And so you got products that fit that contract need to actually take the office outside. So it doesn't surprise me that all these different places want to include some type of outdoor space as part of their organization, whether it's a hospitality, a college, university, a K through 12. We all love to be outside, especially when the weather's pretty, right?
Yes, absolutely. So it is. And actually, what I have even found out is that that's not just in the Sun Belt as well, too. It is just, one of my best markets for its size certainly is up in Minnesota. And they're using, I've done a couple corporate spaces, and I think multifamily as well too.
Sure.
So
Minnesota would be a state that would be really hard to be outdoors in January and December and January, right?
Oh yeah, it's impossible.
In May, June, July, and August.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Of course, in Texas, where I am, July and August, you don't want to be outside.
It's kind of flipped. Yeah. You've got your really hot months
Very
where
much so.
People don't want to go outside.
It is interesting, though, when you go to places that have outdoor spaces, how full they are. People want to be out there. Just as an example, this is not necessarily tied to our business, our industry, but there's a cute little coffee shop about 3 miles from me. And I go there occasionally to have a coffee. I take my laptop, and they have Wi-Fi and all that stuff, and I'll go hang out at work. They have a very, very small indoor space. Like maybe seats 10 people,
Okay.
But that outdoor space, oh my gosh, it's humongous.
Yes, and
And
that's where the people gravitate
yeah,
towards.
absolutely. And when the weather is nice, who wouldn't want to work out there? The Wi-Fi works out there. So
Yeah.
there is a big need and demand, and we see it with more and more people coming into the outdoor space. So with that, let's talk for a minute about what separates you guys from the competition, if you will. What makes you different or special?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think there's a bunch of things,
Mhm,
and I think from I can look at that from where the product is coming from and how it's sourced
mhm,
and things like that. I could also look at it from how we compare to other manufacturers in the marketplace. So, and there's probably some more things that I can compare against,
mhm,
but anyway, so if you look at where we are in the market and where I see the rest of the market, there are a lot of there's a lot of outdoor furniture that's kind of generated from the hospitality industry.
mhm,
So now much of that is not necessarily it's heavily influenced by dining, and it's heavily influenced by kind of lounging around and being squishy, poofy, comfortable
mhm.
type furniture. We're definitely not that. So, in fact, I don't even think I'll ever do upholstered work. I
Sure.
might, who knows? But, at the moment, it just doesn't seem like a category that we would fit in because I think it's already really quite filled. So in that you have that, which is not necessarily appropriate for a lot of environments. It's appropriate if you want to lounge, but
Mhm,
if you want to get some work done, or if you want to meet with other people, or in some ways, even if you want to take a break, but what have you, um, it doesn't necessarily work. So then, and I think I maybe mentioned it before in the conversation that there is a lot of outdoor furniture that's really utilitarian, and I mean, it looks like it belongs in at a baseball park or something like that, or not a baseball park, but at a softball park, softball league park, out in the open. And then there is a category of furniture which is really quite nice. There's a few European imports that in some ways some of them are really good products, some of them aren't, but
mhm,
they range. Some of the better ones are companies like Extremis or Catal. There's quite a few European
mhm.
ones, but they're hard to get. They're sometimes they're prohibitively expensive. Sometimes their distribution channels aren't great. Sometimes their lead times are excessively long. So we certainly, I think, look really good compared to companies like that.
Mhm.
So I think that's from some aspect of kind of how we fit in.
Okay.
Our product is much more robust. I mean, I think some of our tables weigh 350 pounds, and
Wow.
they're heavy.
All right.
They're
So I want to
really built like a
reframe.
tank.
Well, I want to reframe what I heard you say, and then I have a follow-up question. So
Sure.
basically what I asked you is tell us about your value proposition. And what I heard,
Yeah.
and I picked up four little phrases. First was materials and
Yeah.
the type of materials that you're using. Second was the design of the product, paying close attention to the design of the product and maybe leaning a little bit to the influence of the European style design. Then I heard price point and lead time were
Yeah.
some of the things that
Right.
really kind of separate you as a brand. And I want to go back to the material that you mentioned. Can you
Yes,
tell
I'd
us a
like
little
to
bit
as
about
well.
the types of material that you're using? You mentioned one table weighing 350 pounds. So tell us about the
What
materials
is
you're
it?
using.
What is it? Yeah. So most of the product we make is really kind of the same formula, the same kind of simple
Mhm,
ingredients. It is for our metal work, which if you can imagine a table, it's got four metal legs and a wooden top. We'll start with that kind of quick idea in your head.
sure.
The metal we do, we use, it's I think 11 gauge steel tube. It's 1/8 inch thick steel tube. It's really pretty heavy stuff. And we actually the coatings that we use on it, we actually borrow some stuff from the automotive industry, and then we're using a really high grade architectural level powder paint for the top coat. So
Hmm.
it's robust, I guess
Hmm.
we'll say.
So I want
And
to jump in
and
there because
sure.
the word that comes to my mind, I'm listening to you describe that, is innovation. You looked outside of our industry because you have
Yep.
metal products that are heavy
Right.
gauge steel. You know what's going outside. So you look outside of our industry to an industry where everything they make goes outside.
Yes, you're right.
And
Yes.
gain some
And they've done a really
ideas.
good job, actually.
Yeah,
Cars
100%.
nowadays do not rust really
Yeah, correct.
nearly as bad as they used to. And, we're using that exact same technology that they used to, dip frames and body panels. So, and then, also just to kind of, another interesting thing, and this kind of ties into working with vendors and finding the right people to work with. We actually don't do much welding. We really are woodworkers for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, which I'll get into the wood, which is pretty interesting too. But we work with a partner. Her business is about 90 miles south of us, I think, in the southeast corner of Iowa. And she owns a metal fab shop for her
Mm-hmm.
family. And the one thing that really piqued my interest in working with her, aside from her willingness to work with me as a startup, was she's solar powered. So you go to her site and it's all filled with solar power, all these panels, and she ends up being kind of a zero. She actually, I
Yep.
think, produces more than she consumes. So it was an interesting little story, but
It's a great story.
nonetheless, so and it helps. I mean, those little things do help market. They open a door and they're like
Mm-hmm.
a good conversation starter. So just from my marketing background, working with all these companies, you pick up
Sure.
on these little tidbits. And but anyway, so that's kind of, we basically pieced a lot of our metalwork through a series of vendors, coders, welders, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I'm in right now, being in Iowa, we're mostly, aside from agriculture, we're mostly steel workers around here.
Mm-hmm.
So because of John Deere and things like
Yep.
that. So that's kind of a lot of the infrastructure in this part of the country. So, but anyway, you were asking about wood.
Yep.
Correct. So the wood, and this is a little bit of a story of like the trial and error of starting a new product from scratch. And
Yep. There's always trials and errors.
oh, it is. Yeah. And that's it's all kind of fun and games, but when things don't work in the field, you have a very, very, very big problem. And
Yes.
for the first, this is kind of the downside and the risk of doing this and being an entrepreneur, is that you make a lot of guesses, and you believe in yourself and you believe you're making the right choices, but you still have to take some risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first wood that we actually used, it went through a really super interesting process of like ultra high temperatures that helped with stability. It helped with rot resistance, and it was a beautiful product. It was really, really, really nice. However, though, it made the wood really brittle, and we had problems with cracking in the field. And so at the first, and it was pretty painful at first. The first like year and a half of product we had in the field, we were having problems with. And anybody in this industry knows that this type of transaction in a commercial level, you're expected to stand behind your product. You have to warrant it, and if it doesn't work, you have to replace it, and you have to pick up the tab for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to do that a lot. And it felt like a lot. I guess in retrospect, it wasn't. It was enough. It was enough to.
When you're spending money, it's always a lot.
When you're spending money and you're starting up and you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to invest in the company, but then you're also trying to go back and make sure that those products are right. So we had to do that, and that was tough. Now, this was maybe the first year and a half of product, which was during COVID, which was relatively slow. So my exposure had some limits, and
Sure.
thankfully, we did on the fly. Not so much on the fly. I mean, it was in the back of my mind. We knew that we needed a different solution, trying to figure it out, and we actually ended up changing it on the fly. And I think I'm certain it's been out long enough. What we have right now is actually really, really good product. But what we ended up doing was using the material we ended up using and going with the southern yellow pine, which again, this kind of ties into a little bit of kind of some of the market proposition and the positioning in the market. We use a type of southern yellow pine, which is unlike pine that you get, or fir that you get for 2x4s, which is really soft.
Mm-hmm.
Southern yellow pine is really hard wood. It's about as hard as cherry, actually. And
where's it grown?
It's grown mostly from mostly grown from East Texas all the way to the Carolinas. So it's
Yep,
really in your
the
neck
Pine
of the
Belt.
woods. And the species, it's kind of interesting. It grows to be like 100 foot tall in about 30 years. It's a super, super fast growing tree.
Yep.
And I think it has actually the statistic of being the fastest growing commercially harvested tree in North America. So
So I
it
want to
has.
point out you're
Mhm.
using a renewable resource. You started
Oh
out
yeah, absolutely.
something that you
Absolutely.
tried
Yes.
didn't work. You looked for another solution. You found a solution that's a really great hardwood, and
Yes.
it's a renewable resource because the tree can reproduce itself really
Oh yes.
quickly, and
Absolutely.
it's abundant. It's somebody who lives in Texas and has a daughter who goes to school in East Texas.
Yes.
There are pine trees everywhere.
They're
So
everywhere. They
yeah,
call them
yeah,
loblolly pines, actually.
yep,
I don't know if you've heard that
I
term
have.
before, but loblolly pine is
Hmm.
actually the species name, but from an industry standpoint, they call it southern yellow pine.
Sure.
And but yeah, it is, and it's kind of, I think the forestry that's in that part of the country has been increasing in productivity over the last like 60 years. So it's a
Hmm.
really, really good sustainable story, and it works outside. And we've, and it's not just that we actually go all the way down to a mill in Alabama to have them cut it to our spec to
That's
make sure
great.
it's the right cuts of the wood and it's processed the right way. So we have actually, again, going back to trying to figure out all the parts and pieces of starting a business and figuring out that supply chain, we had to end up going all the way down there, and I buy it at a truck at a time. So
That's great.
to be able to
Well,
get exactly what we need.
you're building a really great sustainability story for your organization as well. And I
Mhm.
really appreciate the tie in to working with suppliers who are also committed to sustainability, and the story of your metal fabricator using solar power. I think it is so important because as an industry, we consume in our products, the manufacturing of our products, a lot of our world's natural resources,
Oh yeah.
and being
Yes.
sure that we're focused on giving back and making smart business decisions and working with people that are in alignment with our strategies and our vision is really important. It sounds like you've tapped into those to help tell your sustainability story and make that a strategic advantage for you as well.
Well, and I think it's not just a story. It's real. That's the one thing that I do get kind of angry. And being, in a product development role, we're producing things all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
that production consumes things. There's no way to get around it. And I think that you can do it in a mindful way. You can do that by choosing materials that you can get more materials of. I mean, yeah, these pine trees grow on a 30-year cycle. Corn grows on a year. It's really the same thing. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's as long as it's managed right, it's still very, very, very productive. And but in addition to that, it's building product that actually will last.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Now, our industry is horrible that after 7 years they throw everything away because the lease is up. And I mean that does happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of outdoor furniture, you look at the warranties on outdoor furniture, it's usually between 1 and 3 years. It's really abysmal. Now, I'm not saying that these products that are being sold in the market will last between 1 and 3 years. They'll probably last longer than that. But,
Mm-hmm.
that gives you kind of an indication of how usable they are over time. And, we certainly we have a 5-year warranty, which, actually, it depends on how you look at it. But I think that if you take care of their furniture, it will last decades.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Totally
I
agree with
think
that.
I think that's part of it as well too. I think it's not building disposable product,
Mm. So
even no matter
important.
where it's coming from.
So, Jim, let's switch gears for just a second and
Sure.
tell us about the future. Like, what are you working on? Where are you guys
Mhm.
headed? It sounds like you have some amazing products. We are going to drop the link to your website down in our
That's
show
great. I
notes so everybody
appreciate it.
can go there. But, tell us a little bit about some of the things that are coming for you guys in the direction you're headed.
Well, I think I can answer that again in probably two buckets.
Mm-hmm.
One is certainly strategically what we're trying to do with the business and where we're trying to move that, and then the other one is what the fun stuff is, where the product is going to go. So, from a strategic standpoint, I am still very much in the process of filling out reps and representation throughout the country. I have, maybe about a third of the country full. I have great reps in Texas. I have good rep in Northern California. So, and there's a few more. I have actually about 3 or 4 different really good reps. And I've just added Bill Corbett up in New York and Pennsylvania, I think. And
Okay.
Mike Webb is another person we picked up in, I think, Ohio. But anyway, so there's still a lot of areas of the country that I'm still looking for good reps. So that's certainly one strategic thing. We are continuously, when I way back when I worked at HNI, we had this rapid continuous improvement. That's what the word was. That's what the phrase was. I heard it hundreds of times, and I believe it. So we are certainly trying to, make our production run better and make our relationship and our working relationship with our vendors run better, because this is a lead time industry. And so we're trying to make sure that those things are working, making sure your costs are good, all of those, unfortunate pragmatic things of running a business. So that's in that bucket. But the other bucket with regards to product, I consider this line that we have really kind of an inaugural line. I think it is what it is. I look at the likelihood of us launching more collections, I think, is a better way to describe it. And I think probably because of my background, I'm certainly interested in different types of materials. Right now we're using wood and steel. I don't think, I think if we launch something else, we're going to use different materials just to increase our interest in the marketplace. I think, but we also are probably going to leverage some of our other vendors. I'm probably looking into certainly more metal furniture. There's certainly a lot of different plastics that work well outside. High density polyethylene is a good one that a lot of people use. There's a bunch of things that keep swimming through my mind as far as like where to go with this. But I think we will certainly stay in within the markets that we've already had access to. We may turn it a little bit more to education focused products, because I think I'm learning that that's a really big opportunity.
Yep.
So we might try and start to, put a little bit of an accent on what we talk about when it comes to that segment. So I guess I'm not really sure. It's hard to say.
But you're no different than anybody else, right? You're literally entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs are always thinking of ideas of ways to grow their business. And I liked how you broke it into the strategic initiatives, adding more independent reps, looking at your supply chain, and then also looking at products. And that product means looking at product innovation, looking at new collections, collaborations, and also listening to your customers about what products they need. Some of the best ideas come directly from our customers. So, Jim, as we start to wrap up, I just want to first off say it's been a pleasure to meet you. And I really appreciate all the insight. Absolutely. Well, we met on LinkedIn. I actually saw a LinkedIn post that you, and I read up a little bit about you guys, and I reached out and said, I think you'd make a great guest on my show, because I always like highlighting younger or newer companies or people doing really cool things. And I think you fit in that category really well, because you are a young company. You're facing the world head on, taking on a category that is got some gaps in it inside of our industry, and, focusing on outdoors. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Again, doing really cool things as it relates to innovation, sustainability, and leading the way, I think, in this category of outdoor furniture. So I really appreciate you being here.
Good. And I'm glad you are serving the market as you do. So
I do my best.
Yes.
Do my best. So any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our community, a little about Parcel, about what you do that will help them to remember you when it comes time to specify furniture for the outdoor space?
I should have been prepared for a question like this. I think if I can get anybody that is listening to this just to look at our website and see what it is, I think that you'll see right off the bat the versatility of the product. And I think if you do get an opportunity to touch and feel it, you'll see the robustness of it. I think it's coming from a small business that is, we're made in the middle. We're right in Iowa, so we're from that perspective, and that I think we know how to make stuff. I think
Awesome.
I figured out how to make furniture, and figured out how to make furniture that's valuable to the marketplace, and I think it's worth using.
That's fantastic. So again, I really appreciate you being here. One last question. If our community would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So I would say certainly through the website, there's kind of the generic emails that you can go that actually goes to my desktop, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll give you my LinkedIn profile.
So if you're a frequent listener to the show, you know that my request is if you reach out to Jim to connect with him, please let him know that you heard him here on the Trend Report. So he knows that
absolutely.
He's getting some reach. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.